Elvira Arellano, the undocumented immigrant who sought refuge in a Humboldt Park church for a year, was arrested in Los Angeles yesterday. She has been deported to Mexico. Today, her supporters gathered outside the Immigration and Customs office here in Chicago to protest her deportation. In recent months, Homeland Security officials have arrested more illegal immigrants and stepped up workplace enforcement, but have Arellano's actions helped or hurt the move for immigration reform? Joining us now to talk about this and more, Esther Cepeda. She is a columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times. Enrique Rodriguez, a reporter at Univision, who has covered the story extensively, and Alderman Ricardo Munoz, who has advocated on behalf of Arellano. Welcome all of you to Chicago Tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Esther, where do you stand on what's happened to Ms. Arellano?
Well, if the question is, has she helped or hurt the movement, I think that she has been a very divisive figure. She is not, in my opinion, someone who does adequately represent the 12 million undocumented workers here. They have not been vocal and bombastic in saying that the American people owe them citizenship or owe them the right to be here. Most of them aren't convicted felons. Many of them have overstayed.
She was because of Social Security?
That she was working fraudulently on a Social Security number. And she has really caused tension even among the Hispanic community between people who say, yes, she should go, and people who say we need to fight for her no matter what. So, she's become quite the lightning rod.
And the Chicago Tribune poll, which admittedly was an unscientific poll, had an awful lot of people who ended up weighing in on this, apparently pretty passionately and apparently pretty negatively about this discussion. How do we account for that, Esther?
Well, I think that if you polled every American, they would say absolutely we need to reform the immigration laws. Everybody's for immigration law reform. Everybody can certainly sympathize with all of these families who have all these multiple issues and all the children that were born here and everything. But for a person to go into a church and demand change and demand that laws be changed for her to, just forget about everything that's happened. It should be changed and she should be allowed. And to have that be the message that goes out into this mainstream media, which is not delving deeply into the subject, is just not helpful.
There is, it seems, a sort of galvanizing feeling out there that isn't working in favor of Elvira Arellano. And so going back to strategy, did they do this well enough to persuade Congress, to persuade the public in general of her plight and the reasonableness of her position, do you think?
I don't think so. I think this whole thing has really gotten people who were on the fence and thought, I really see this side, and just they're disgusted by it. I just don't think that this conversation that we're having about Elvira Arellano has anything to do with immigration law reform. It has to do with what she's done to this movement. And I think she's heard it. We're talking about, well, she's teaching her son to stand up for what he believes in. What does he believe in? He believes in what his mother tells him. He's been dragged along for a year on this, and it was a year before then, And this is a child who has attention deficit disorder, separation anxiety issues that were diagnosed in the 2 years before she went into sanctuary. That's why she got stays of deportation that politicians helped her secure to stay in the country, because he needed to be treated for these. And on top of all this, and on top of knowing he's got the separation anxiety, the attention deficit disorder, he's being trotted out in front of cameras. Anybody that came calling, this is a traumatic thing for for a child who has these issues.
I could have told him it was going to happen. She certainly must have told him it could have happened. So nobody can be surprised that this child was put in that position. And to your point, Esther, and to Enrique, how does she not know quite what she's going to do? They've been in the planning of this. Did no one sort of anticipate how they were going to make their next
I don't think
move?
She actually believed that she was going to get picked up. Or if she did, I'm not sure. I talked to family representatives earlier today, and they told me that there is no way that he is staying over there, that he is coming back to Chicago, that he's got his school
with Reverend
supplies,
Coleman and his wife,
and
Mrs.
Yes,
Lozano.
they secured a power of attorney, and he was going to come back to Chicago, and they were going to maintain his life as it was, because in effect, aside from being in that apartment all this time, he was being taken to school by family members. He was getting parent conferences done by proxies. I mean, he's had this whole entire life that didn't include his mother. So really, you know, she won't be there at night when he gets home, yes, but the rest of his life will be able to carry on as was.
For example,
Set up a system by which people can apply to enter the country legally, and you won't need a fence.
And so, Esther, you were going to say?
Well, what I believe is that the reason this compromise bill did not pass is that nobody believed that the government would actually follow through with what was being offered. I think that these crackdowns that we're seeing right now, the stepped up raids, the enforcement of Social Security numbers, is all an effort to get the country back on track to where they can believe that enforcement of existing laws will happen so that we can move forward with any proposed laws that might come about.
Going back to Elvira Arellano for a moment, there are those who see her as a kind of Rosa Parks. There are those who most definitely do not. Where do we come down on that?
The Rosa Parks thing was a disastrous publicity. You know, it just made her look even more unsympathetic to multiple parts of the Chicago and the national audience that she was hoping to get. And you know, she should have chosen her words a little more carefully, or her handler should have. But
Esther Cepeda, Enrique Rodriguez, and Rick Munoz, thanks very much for being with us on Chicago Tonight.